institution of about 10, 12,000 students. We're a Seaboard school. We went live with a mobile credential last October. We're seeing about 20% of our transactions all being done by mobile now. Access control is through Seaboard. We have probably 3,000 locations that we're dealing with. Is that enough?
I think that's great.
I mean, I could keep going, but.
Thank you. We'll go ahead. Bob, can you be next for us?
Hello, Bob Dorado from Marshall University, Huntington, West Virginia. We are celebrating 1-year anniversary of being a mobile school. We started last April. We have about 12,000 students and about 450 devices on our campus network, and are just real thrilled with how it's gone over. Our population loves it, been a big hit, and we're excited to keep moving forward with it with the addition of the soon coming Android mobile.
Hey, thank you. And last but never least, Cheryl.
Thank you. And it is, I want to reiterate what Janine said. It's so good to see everybody here today, at least to see some faces that we miss seeing in Austin. I'm with Arkansas State University, been here 24 years. We went with mobile in August of 2019. So we're looking forward to our first orientation sessions virtually, I guess. But anyway, so we're looking forward to that this year. We have an enrollment of around 14,000 on campus, and then we have several sister campuses as well. So.
All right, thank you. So we're just going to go ahead and start with a question. And what we kind of did is the four of us got together and listed the questions that we generally get during a presentation. And so it's really more about getting started. This first question is about getting started with mobile. So I'm going to ask the panelists, and Cheryl, since you were the last, how about we start with you first this time? How does the card office gain campus support to plan, fund, and implement a project that has campus-wide impact?
Meeting with all of the stakeholders, meeting with all the departments to get their buy-in and their support on the product, I think is the key to the success of the product as well. With Janine and the ones that led the pathway for us, they had a little bit more of a challenge than some of the rest of us as far as they couldn't say anything. It was very hush-hush. They were under NDA. But I think just mainly meeting with all your different departments, finding out who all the users of the credential on campus are, who your stakeholders are, meeting with all of them and getting their support, getting their buy-in, and any input of suggestions on how the product can work.
Thank
Mark?
you.
Yeah, we were also under an NDA, which made it kind of difficult to talk to our constituents in the field. Our office is pretty much self-sufficient. We have our own, we are the IT wing, we are the card office wing. We're basically do it all. So we could pretty much roll on our own. We're self-funded, so we had a little bit of a war chest. We were moving away from mobile anyways, but getting some of the bigger partners involved early, saying, oh, by the way, you didn't really hear me say this if anybody asks, but you know, our College of Medicine, we brought in early into the equation because they were a big user of our access control, and we wanted to make sure they were on board with us.
He's outside with the jackal on. It defeats the purpose, Mark.
Okay. All right. Bob, how about you?
Well, it's fortunate in our IT administrative unit where we fall under, we have pretty much made the decision to go mobile as far back as 2012. We were just waiting on the providers and the phone manufacturers and carriers to catch up to that. So we were set there. The most important thing for us was getting the student buy-in, and it's not that we didn't have the buy-in, it was making sure they were at the table and they had their input, and the finance folks, administrative folks knew that if they made the investment, it was something that they would definitely use, not just be something that we spent money on, but they wanted to know ahead of time the students were behind it 100%. And luckily they were. Our student government had cousins and relatives at Duke and Alabama and places that were already on the road with this, so that made it good that they could reference their relatives or friends' experiences. but definitely make sure you have your students at the table.
And I'm just going to add to that too. Our students actually put out an SGA resolution. So that was very helpful in that we could take that resolution to the administration, because we did a top-down approach. We got the administration to agree to the project, which made it easier for the action card to go out and tell a department that you were going to do this and you were going to have to pay for it. So that was our approach. We have, though I joke about it, but we actually had wonderful campus partners who worked extremely hard and were always cooperative throughout this. But the reality is a card office can often not be the people that are telling another department what to do. And so by going top down, it kind of made it that this is a UA project, and that's how we got around the campus wide. Cheryl, let's see, oh, you answered the question. So they were wondering if Cheryl did have a NDA, and you did. So any other questions about the NDA? I mean, what it restricted? Okay, all right. And we'll go ahead and jump. This was actually a question that was going to be on our list too. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this question. How did you justify losing revenue on lost ID in exchange for going mobile? How about Mark? You want to start first? Get you unmuted.
Yep, get me unmuted. Okay, yeah. We're still struggling with how we're going to resolve that. We still, as much as we tried to have a 100% use case for the mobile credential, we've been stumbling across applications that are still mag stripe. So they are still required to have their CAT card with them. So if they lose their CAT card, they still come in to get their plastic card. If they are, some of our off-campus merchants do not take the contactless or the NFC credential yet, and the city buses do not take, like you were mentioning earlier, we could not dictate to the city, oh, by the way, you got to go out and throw in, hundreds of readers in your buses going around town. So the students, so we're still getting some lost card revenue from the students that are using it off campus or at those locations that are still mag stripe.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
So we're just finishing 1 full year, so we don't have a lot of numbers to throw out there yet as far as 1 year of operations. But at Marshall, the approach we took was you only get one credential. You use the card or you use the mobile. So our orientation class that came in last year had the choice. So you have to realize there will be some savings from printing the initial cards. So we estimate we didn't print almost 3,000 cards last summer because we were pushing the people to use the mobile. So there will be some savings there, but on the lost cards, the replacement fee has been a push to encourage people to use mobile, which is what we want. We want folks to use that. We feel it's safer. We feel like the students are always have their phone in their hand. They're a lot less likely not to have their card with them at some point. So we want them to use the mobile, and we see that replacement fee as a push to do that for those that haven't made the change yet, or those that didn't start out with it from the beginning.
Okay. And Cheryl?
I agree with Bob. I think the cost savings on the printing supplies will offset the cost of the mobile credential. A question did come across right now that Bob kind of alluded to. Bob's only offering one credential. The question was, do you allow multiple credentials? Right now, I know we are still going to allow both for a time being. I know some of the universities that are doing mobile are not, but right now we see that we need to for the time being. Possibly next year we may go to mobile only. We are making it, as Janine and I have discussed offline, we've making it a little more difficult for them to get both. We are encouraging for them to have their mobile only. So, Mark?
Yeah, we right now have both the card and the mobile wallets in the phone and the watch, but we are ready to turn off the chip in the card. We're going to leave the mag alone until we can convert the bus system in the off-campus, but we've got it set up so that when they sign up for the mobile credential, their chip would be deactivated, so they would not be able to use it at dining or to get back into the res hall. They would then be forced to use their phone or watch.
I guess I just wanted to add a little different perspective too when it comes to the lost card revenue. We are down 87% in lost card revenue, but that is considered a positive by our VP for Finance and Operations because it eliminated a student fee. In a world where there are often so many student fees listed on a bill, the idea that we were able to eliminate one through the use of technology was considered a benefit for the institution. And just like you were saying, every time there's a lost card, the first thing we say is, do you have mobile? And so why don't you just use mobile? But we understand the multiple credentials. We call it a transition period. We feel like we're getting to the point now where we don't need a transition period anymore. We did originate without vending working because we were using a third-party vendor for that, and it took them about 9 months to get on track. And vending was just a big use case for campus. So you kind of have to look at your environment. There's no set rules. It's just something to me that you need to look at your environment. Do you have the largest use cases covered where you can do that, or do you need to have a transition period? And we always included funding for both for a 2-year period because we knew there'd be transition. So that's something that I had in my budget, the savings in my budget, and so we've been funding it from our budget. But time has come now, as Cheryl and I have been talking recently, it is time to make that call. Very similar to what Marshall's doing.
And one more thing I'll just throw in is that as we've only been doing this since October, but we've been stumbling across departments that have utilized our card without our knowledge. So that has made us hold on to the mag stripe a little bit longer than we want to, so that we can convert them into the mobile credential world also. So give yourself some time to, 2 years, that's a good number. I was thinking if we could do it in a year, it would be great to iron out all the departments and get them enabled on the mobile side.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, one of our use cases I didn't think about was professors accepting them for their tests. And that took a little bit of time to get everyone on board, even though the provost was aboard from day one. That still, every now and then we'll get a student who says, hey, they say I have to come in here and get a card. And then we'll talk to the dean's office and they'll talk to the professors. But sometimes it's hard to get word out to everyone. And you're changing their processes. So there are going to be some little things like that that you will see too as you're doing this. So we did have a question. How do you keep the student from giving their ID to another student while they use the mobile when using both? Who wants to tackle that one first? Bob, we haven't heard from you in a little bit. How about you be first?
Well, since we're one or the other, I'm probably not a good one to answer that question. But
okay.
We had a period of about 2 months where when we first went live, there was a group of students that got both, and there was some issues. We could catch some duplicate activity at a location in a cafeteria or something. So that just kind of supported our argument to only stick to one credential. So at the end of those 2 months, we went through and deactivated any outstanding cards for the people that had mobile, and we've been one or the other ever since.
Okay. That's great. Cheryl?
We haven't really had any incidents. We have a passback time in our cafeteria or any of our food service areas so that the credential cannot be reused. The individual credential cannot be used. It's not per credential, it's tied to the person itself. So they can't go through the cafeteria more than once in 15 minutes. So, but we really haven't noticed a problem with that. So Mark, have you?
No, actually, we haven't. We've had a few dining services. Sodexo is our dining provider, and they've notified us of a couple of suspect individuals, and we'll just go in and turn off their the chip in their card because they can only use their contactless at their dining halls. So by turning the chip off, they can still use their phone or their watch. But we didn't widely publicize that. So now that the students have disappeared, when they all come back, their chips will be turned off.
Okay.
I think preventing fraud is a good way to use to justify moving to mobile. Students are much less likely to give their buddy a $1,200 phone to sneak in for an $8 meal than they would a $10 or $20 plastic card. So security for door access and food areas and things is one area we really push as far as we feel like it's more secure in that aspect as well than just the technology.
Yeah.
Yes, same here.
Yeah, and we are picking up less fraudulent card use over these last 2 years too, because we would have issues at football games. We'd have issues sometimes at the dining halls, and we're actually seeing considerably less of that now too, because what the students tend to do is put their card up in their res halls or in their apartments and use it only as backup for some reason, should they lose their phone or such. But they really don't lose their phones very often. That's pretty rare. The only time I've seen the lost phone is if it ended up in the bottom of the lake type situation. Otherwise, they're not really losing their phones. They may buy a new one and need to move over, but they're not really losing their phones. So that's been our experience. So got several questions. So let's see. Let's keep going down the list here. Make sure I'm not missing any. From Deborah, how do you fund ongoing cost beyond printing? Who wants to take that one first? Bob, I got you on my screen, so I'm going to put you first again.
Well, we have a 3-year budget plan to support any losses that we come across that way. I don't think any of the use cases like things that we've made revenue on, vending, printing, and things of that will decline just because the credential has changed. So hopefully our overall funding model for running the department with our state support and our revenue from some of the functions we serve out on campus will change that much. We're only a year in. It's hard to tell at that point right now, but I don't think it's going to affect us overall, and I'm really counting on the savings of not printing the initial cards to make up the biggest part.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, it's kind of a wait and see kind of thing. But again, like Bob was saying, I'm hoping that the cost of our mobile credential should be less than actually producing the card with all the ribbons and the supplies, and not to mention the upfront cost of the printers. And once we can get 100% use case, we will definitely start pushing mobile credentials down the road and make plastic hopefully a thing of the past.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Not only the cost savings from the printing supplies, but also the wear and tear on the readers, having to replace the readers when they're using the mag stripe. I think that will help us out tremendously over the next few years.
Yeah. And we only did this through attrition, but we are actually down one position in the office because she retired. It was actually a position that was getting bored, and that's the person who was sitting up there waiting for all those replacement cards to be made that were not coming in the door anymore because they moved to mobile. So we did actually, again, through attrition, we dropped one student position and then one office position. So that's how we manage that. Okay, let's see what's next. Okay. Oh, replacement topic. If a phone is lost or replaced to a new one, how would replacement work in this scenario? Cheryl, you want to go ahead with that?
My staff usually takes care of that question, but anyway, you can go in and turn your old one off and just upload a new ID. I don't know the specifics, the actual steps right off the bat are not in front of me, but you can just retire your old ID and upload a new credential. It's no problem.
Yeah. Mark?
If you lose your phone, right now, currently, it's only Apple that we're able to do this with. You basically, they log into their Apple, their iCloud account. They can deregister their old phone, register their new phone, and then reload the credentials onto the new phone.
Okay, thank you. Bob, are you obviously, how are you handling that?
The same, being a Transact school, it's the same scenario there. That I'm not sure how it's going to work with the Android version yet, but it's easy to freeze the card, your existing credential, and go through into the eAccounts app and install the new one into the new phone.
It is a very simple process. Perhaps the only thing that I would add is we do also, if they call in, we can go ahead and freeze it for them. but generally we ask them to go to the iCloud so that they remove the whole credential. So it's not just freezing it, but also removing it from their device. We really had this hit. We went in October, and then that December, it seemed like everyone got a new phone and came back to school.
Mhm.
And if you already had a watch on, you'll hit the 2 device limit for your Apple. And so they couldn't add their new phone because they had turned in their old phone without actually removing it. So that's when we quickly learned about the iCloud. You just go on your, you can go in on your new phone, remove the old one, and immediately provision again. So it's a great process. One other thing too is if you have a third-party security system, and in the university, we're a Transact school, but we have a Linnell access control system. We do have an interface that was written by our IT department that as soon as they see the device is no longer active, they will also deactivate it immediately in the access control system. So if you have a third-party system, you just work with your IT departments or with your vendors. Always very important to reach out to your vendors. They're experts at this. So, okay.
And just to add, that was my question. So just to add one more thing is there any cost, like say in replacement? That's what I meant to also ask that. Are you charging for those replacement?
No, we are not. Is anyone?
No,
No, we're not either.
No
Right,
charge
thank
for
you.
anything mobile.
And all of those directions or steps are, I'm sure, on all of our websites as far as part of the FAQs that we are required to put out there for this product.
All right. And does the mobile credential have to mean the plastic would go away? I think we may have answered that already, in that there's alternatives. I think it'd be very hard to say you absolutely will get rid of every plastic card you have. Still, there might be someone who does not have the right device. With the Apple product, it starts at the 6 phone. So you want to, or 6S, I'll have to look. But so if you had a 5, it wouldn't work. So I think no. I think we probably said the answer is no. There's just variations of how you decide for your campus at what point to just kind of mobile is the scenario unless they cannot, or you give them the options. There's all different scenarios there. But now here's another, the second part of that question is, would mobile credential be recommended for enrollment over 5,000? Who would like to take that one? Cheryl, I'm sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, it's of 5,000, not over 5,000. So a smaller school. My first thoughts is, why not? I think it would be beneficial. I think it would be cost savings as far as printing your cards and having to keep up with that. It's more secure, a more secure product than the plastic credential. So, Mark, your thoughts?
Definitely. Schools really need to be moving away from the mag stripe. That technology is as old as I am, and we're all getting old and crickety. So to get rid of the mag stripe and go to NFC, the natural progression was very easy. We kind of stumbled into it. We were getting rid of mag stripe, converting everything to the NFC, and then the Apple wallet potential came up, and it was a no-brainer to go and just add that. We'll always have somebody that doesn't want to use their phone, vendors that may not have a phone, dependents, kids that are using the fitness center. So we'll probably still, I made the comment, get rid of plastic, but we'll probably always have some kind of plastic. And whether or not the UVM ID becomes a souvenir piece, maybe that's what would happen also, but that would be printed on, chipless, contactless, very inexpensive stock.
Bob?
I don't think the size of enrollment really matters to take advantage of the benefits and the security of the mobile ID. A feature that we often talk about the uses of it, another feature that our students have found helpful is on the actual mobile ID in the Apple Wallet. It shows a couple balances if you have a campus spending plan or you have a meal plan. Now those balances show right there, and the student doesn't have to go out to e-accounts or whatever your online portal is and log in separately. They can just one tap, click in and see those. That's been another feature that our students are happy about. And I think we knew in the long run it may cost a few more dollars, or there may be some troubles in making all the transitions. But in the long run, we feel it's the safest technology and the most convenient. And with the Apple Watches and the other pieces that are coming along, I think that it's definitely the way to be looking now.
And I agree. There's a couple of, we call them the unexpected benefits. We also know these are faster transactions because they're not fumbling around to find their cards anymore that are in their backpacks or lost in a pocket somewhere. So they're just coming up, tapping, moving on. And so like at heavy times, like lunch periods, where everyone gets out of class and is rushing into the food service areas, we're seeing much faster transactions. It really helps us for large events, and football is a large event for us for the student section. They tend to want to come 45 minutes before game time, so you've got 15,000 coming right then, and it is so much faster when they use the mobile that we really promote it for that. So kind of taking that into consideration. And then the fact that if we want to talk a little bit pandemic here, the fact that you're not passing a card to a cashier. You're not, when you're using your phone, you're not bumping that reader as much as you would when you're swiping a card or even tapping a card. So it's just a little more from a health perspective. We were kind of touting that during flu season. Didn't know we were going to have a pandemic right after that, but that's another reason to consider it. And lockout concerns for res halls. We had a meeting with our housing department, and they were commenting on how few lockouts they have now, which might go a little bit with our next question, is open doors for safety issues for using both. We have found at orientation that parents heavily promote mobile card to their student, and it's for personal safety. They're thinking about them coming in late at night. They're thinking about them coming from the library late at night, coming in, and they don't have their card with them because they left it in their car, or they don't, again, they're fumbling around for it late at night. So there's actually in the parent's mind a better security issue. So the question was open doors for safety issue for using both. So who wants to tackle that one first? Mark, can I volunteer you?
Yep, I'm trying to figure out exactly what the question is, whether we're using the mobile and the mag at the door.
Yes.
I actually asked that question in a poor response. I'm Diane from North Dakota State University, and we're looking at going mobile at some point, but how do we run it past and get it approved with the safety issue of, let's say someone can enter the wellness center, but on the other hand, their buddy opens a secure res hall. And, that would be a big safety concern.
I apologize. I'm jumping in here only because I know Duke actually has something like that. They actually pay attention to where people are on campus. So if something happens at a dining hall, and then as much as I don't want to tout Duke because I'm from UNC, but they have some programming in there that does, if somebody is over at the dining hall and then they're also opening something across campus, they know something hinky is going on, and then they pay attention to it more and talk to the student and see what's going on. If that helps.
We have geofencing in place so that if I'm sitting here at home, I cannot unlock the door in town. I have to be within a specified number of meters of the door or wherever I'm trying to do a transaction, if that's what you mean.
And that's our justification for only having one or the other. We don't do both. If you choose mobile ID, you turn in or we suspend your card. If you prefer a card, then we don't activate your mobile, or vice versa. And say when it comes between those two, someone is less likely to give their $1,200 phone to someone to sneak in somewhere than they would a $10 plastic card. We think that increases security.
Agree. That's why we're leaning toward going mobile only and doing away with the plastic. Except for certain groups. I know there's several questions on here that this may can answer all at one time. Visiting groups, I think we found the exact wording that they used. Sorry, Janine wasn't trying to take over that part.
Fine.
Now I've lost my question. But for like our camps and conferences, visiting groups, things like that, we will still provide a plastic card. But if it's for the greater population, the faculty, staff, and students, we are going to encourage the mobile credential. We may even get possibly look at the wearables for our camps and conferences. So there's still going to be a need for a few plastic cards on campus, but the majority we will push to mobile credential only.
And I think that may answer the question you were perhaps seeing was, how do you address the small number of employees or students that may not have a smartphone, and talking about the other groups. I'm not sure that I think plastic will ever totally go away, but can you get it down because of the cost savings involved with mobile card, get that number way, way down? Because we know from our IT department that there are 2% of the population, just immediately 2% of the population are not eligible because they're not using an iOS or Android device. And then you have to look at, then you go into the categories, are those devices compatible with the project too? So again, if you're using a 5, it's not going to be. So it's different ways to handle that. So thank you. Anybody else have anything else you want to say about that subject before we move on? Okay. Now we did have a question about voting. From Pamela, our card is used as a source for voting in our state, so we have to provide a card with a signature. How does this work with the mobile credential? I know our card can be used for voting, but it's not required. They can also show a driver's license, but our driver's license are now mobile card too. So how about y'all? Bob, you want to start?
In West Virginia, they're not used for voting at this time. They are considered a state issued ID, but not in the same form as like a driver's license or something. You can't use our IDs to board a plane, but you can use them for some to conduct business in some government offices and things throughout the state. So I guess for us, it's more of a state ID purpose than a federal ID. So no voting, no airplanes or anything with the mobile ID or our plastic cards. That didn't change, but the same purposes you could use the plastic card for, you can use for the mobile ID.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, it's a UVM ID for UVM use. The state doesn't require you to have that. Driver's licenses, in fact, when I go in both, they just say, hey, Mark, and they check my name off, and that's a small town, I guess. But you can't get on planes with a UVM ID. So we haven't crossed that bridge yet, but we have been working with the vendor there is a front side and a back side to your mobile ID. And like Bob was saying earlier, on the front side, you do have your balances that display, but on the back side, we do have some information that we've been tweaking. And I would imagine we could even put a signature, a JPEG signature in there, but that's just shooting from the hip.
Same here. Arkansas does not require, or we do not use our IDs for voting, so that does not become an issue here. So,
but that would definitely be a good question to discuss with your vendor as you're looking at it and putting your project plan together. Again, they are incredible resources, so talk to your vendors. Mobile card is still developing, so you may have hit where so far there's not experience with when it's required to be a voting ID and there's not an alternative for someone to use. So that's a good question, I believe, for your vendors. Okay. So now we're being asked, let's see, from John, have you had to discontinue any services due to moving to mobile-only environment? Has anyone here?
we haven't.
Yeah, we haven't.
No, we haven't either.
There were some preparations going into this to make sure that all our partners and things could take the mobile ID. So it wasn't, we had a lot of things to prevent that from happening. So when we went live, we had 100% use of the mobile ID everywhere that the plastic cards were accepted. So we had to do some work with our bookstore, with our Stars office, food service partners and things to make sure all their terminals that accept the mag strips would be able to accept the mobile credential. So,
yeah, and the library with the vending and checking out books, Farrell's printing. Yeah, the goal was to have everything in place before, but we've been working the past 6 months or so to try to stop those little where you need to use a mag stripe or your card. But
those of you that may not know that for the campus to really benefit from that and to sign on, you also need to make sure that your partners that don't use your university ID but accept other payments on your campus, that they're able to accept the Apple Pay and the Google Pay, and that is a tender at any businesses or related points of sale on campus that may not specifically work with your ID card program. If they're accepting debit credit card payments, you need to make sure they're mobile friendly as well. So we had a little time to work with that, and luckily all those partners knew it was something that they needed to do or had on their radar. They just speeded it up to be compliant with us.
And I do think, though, that you need to be very forward thinking about the fact that someone may be using your current card in a manner you're not aware of. They're not using it at a approved reader. So it's not your reader. It's not an approved like access control reader. We did find several of those. We actually had one of our VPs send, the VP for each area sent out a memo to deans, director, department heads, asking them to fess up and let us be aware, because the last thing we want to do is interrupt service to the students. That we were trying to be extremely careful about that. So, and they popped up. We kind of knew they were out there, but this did make them pop up. We still had one surprise when we actually converted that day. I guess they didn't take it seriously or they didn't read the memo, but we've been able to deal with all those. But I do make sure you look for those unknown uses of your card too. So, okay, let's see. All students would like to have a membership card ID to show that they belong to the school. It shows pride, it's tangible. A mobile credential does not provide that. Any issues or concerns about that? Bob?
Well, it does. If you look at in the mobile, in your Apple Wallet or incoming Google Wallet, on your virtual ID, you have a virtual ID card in there that has your name. It shows you're a student. We've got a nice university image across the back. And there's a lot of memberships now to different things around that are all virtual or electronic digital membership cards. And I think we're just maybe the first one some of the students have, but you still have that to pull out and show, hey, here's my, I don't know if it shows with that background, but you do have an ID. It's just virtual as opposed to plastic.
Cheryl?
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Bob. Yes, it's not plastic, but it is on their phone. Again, they're going to have their phone with them more than they will a plastic card. Take a screenshot of it as well and keep it if they want it.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, the students think it's pretty cool to show it their, on their watch, hey, my UVM ID is right here, or on their phone. So it's actually kind of a cool thing that they can actually show off their phone, their ID on the phone.
Somebody mentioned,
sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Someone mentioned parents early on. We found our first day of orientation last summer, the parents were a big obstacle to the acceptance of mobile ID the way we were presenting it. They wanted the students to have what they had. They wanted that card to show they were here. They didn't quite understand the modern day technology and how it would work and how it was used. So the second day of orientation, we retooled our video. We included the parents more. We showed all the digital benefits and conveniences and things of it and began to get their buy-in. But at first, the students were just texting mom and dad across campus, hey, do I want a card or use my phone? And the parent, oh, you want an ID card? You have to have an ID card. You're a student there. And so education, especially to the parents, is an important key to buy-in, not just to the students.
That's a very good point. Thank you. But I am going to agree with what Mark said about the cool factor. That's what we see in social media. And actually, university here feels it benefits them at orientation, because at orientation, you upload your photo, you upload your ID document. And once the photos approved, the ID documents electronically destroyed, the photos retained, and within a day, it doesn't, we put a day so they just don't do it the instant they get the approval email. It doesn't take any time at all. Provisioning is instant, but they're already ready to provision. So we feel like they're going, and the university feels like they're going around showing their friends in high school, look, I've already got my card. I'm part of the UA community. Okay, so let's see. Hopefully that answered that question. And what % of buy-in for all schools? Mark, can we start with you this time?
Sure. Yeah, we've got about 10,000 undergraduates, maybe a total population, including faculty, staff, close to 15. We've probably got 30%. We got just over 4,000 users. We saw an uptick with the beginning of this COVID-19 stuff. We had a couple hundred jump almost immediately when word was getting out that they were going to go to a remote campus, and that the only way you're going to get in was with your UVM ID. But we're just over 4,000, about 4,200 now, I think, on campus. Our IT folks figured there's probably 6,500 to 7,000 Apple users according to their Wi-Fi diagnostics, or however they were able to snoop in on that. So if it's that, then we're close to half.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl?
We have about 14,000 on the Jonesboro campus. We're probably about 35% right now. Again, we missed our orientations last summer, but we did have an uptick with the COVID. And with students coming in and losing their IDs, we're like, do you have your mobile? Do you have it on your mobile phone? And it was like, oh, really? We can get that? And so, yes, we encourage them every time they come in the door to get the mobile credentials. So we're about 35% right now.
Bob?
Of our overall community, we don't really have a good number. What we have been tracking is new cards issued, new people added, and about what we consider eligible students and staff. We have about 80% choosing the mobile ID up front. So 80% of first-time ID people that are on the main campus and have an Apple device. Now, once we are up and running with Android as well, we expect that number up in the 90s. But so the eligible people, we are running about 80%.
Yeah, we got at orientation, we get about 70 to 75% at orientation last year. And we're going virtual this year, so it should be really interesting. But yeah, we get about 75% over the last 2 years of our freshmen, and that's really who we've been primarily targeting. So you'll see the freshman class will be higher than the other classes. We have 38,000 students, but that includes distance learners, and we just added distance learners. So we were up over 25,000. We're starting to go down a little bit now because of graduation as people just start. We'll remove it for them, for the ones that graduate and are enrolled for grad school, but a lot of times they'll go ahead and remove it themselves as they're graduating. So we're at, like I said, at the 25,000 range with 38,000, but 13% of that 38,000 are DL students that we are just now offering mobile card to. We started with our own campus students only, and now we're expanding to our ELI program, faculty and staff, distance learners.
We only had about 2 weeks last April once we got going to our big push to our existing community. And then the focus was on new students coming in. And it was that way through the fall. And in this past spring, we started kind of doing some outreach, going out to different departments, different buildings on campus for people to have the opportunity to make the move at their site instead of having to come to our office to switch over to mobile. And we were having real good success with that. And then COVID came along and we had to abandon those efforts. But when we're back up running again, I think we'll try to go out and take it to more people to make it easier for them to switch to mobile if they haven't yet.
And we don't have Android yet. We'll be adding Android here fairly soon. Do the rest of y'all have the current Android version out?
I was told that we'd be ready to rock and roll. I was hoping to have it before NACU so we could, have another feather in our cap. But I was told that June is our Android date, that hopefully we can at least get our test populations up and running.
Cheryl, did you use?
Well, we've been using the Android not in Google Pay as of yet, but we will open it up to Google Pay soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it looks like for all of us, Android will be coming here over the summer so that we'll be prepared for fall. So, okay. Let's see. I'm just catching up where Richard dropped his phone in the lake last summer, so he experienced what our students do. With the use of one credential, what happens if a student has phone issues, like the phone does not hold a charge and they cannot use it? What's the alternative for eating or making purchases? Cheryl, I got you up on my screen, so can you go first?
Okay. With the iPhones, they can be almost with a dead battery, or the phone and you still have, I think, like 20 taps. Bob and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's like 20 taps that is still available that the student can get into their res hall or go downstairs, go to eat in the cafeteria or the food court. So,
Mark?
Yep. When it's on the newer Apple phones, there is a power reserve, so that if your phone is quote unquote dead and it won't even light up, it will still have transactions within that. You'll still be able to do tap transactions. A lot of our dining facilities, the clerks know their patrons coming in, and if the phone is dead and they don't have their ID, sometimes they'll send them away, but sometimes they'll just say, go to the CAT card office, get a new card for the time being, or get a new phone.
Okay, all right. Bob?
I think that's one of those dangers you're overthinking. If most students, they'll go without oxygen before they let their device go without power. So it happens very rarely. And we have the group charging stations and things around campus. They can charge up pretty quick. A lot of them have the extra backup battery packs in their purse or in their gym bag or backpack. So students, they'll run out of gas in their car before they run out of power on their device.
Yes. How many of us parents have lost our chargers to our kids because they are trying to charge their phone? But I know it's not been an issue at UA. They seem to be keeping their phones. And as you said, even though it may appear dead, it has a couple of extra taps in it. I'm going to combine a couple of questions because we are getting a little short on time. I want to talk about library processes. Or how are you handling barcodes if you have that with your library? Student printing. They mentioned paper cut in particular, and off-campus vendors. So Bob, how about we start with you?
Well, we're a Transact school, so in the interfaces we use with printing, which we're Uniprint, bookstore, Follett, and then our registers we're using with Sodexo and things. We were real fortunate. Blackboard had, or Transact now had some peripheral devices that only accept taps. You just plug them in USB. Luckily, those devices met all of our needs at all those places. So we had to invest in 30 or 40 of those to fill in the tap of needs for printing and a couple other purposes. But it was very easy, plug and go, and very seamless. And we're using those still for contactless cards and the mobile devices. I know that would vary depending on what third-party programs you're using or who your card system provider is, but luckily for us, that was pretty seamless.
Okay. Did you have off-campus?
We did not have off-campus.
Okay.
No, we're all here.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Yeah, we had started converting to contactless on our micro systems and stuff with, we're a Seaboard school using Allegiant or the Aptique, Desfire EV1. And so we had converted, like Bob was saying, they're simple USB devices. We just had to upgrade the firmware to recognize the mobile credential coming in, and it still accepts the plastic, the chip credential also. Pharos, we were able to utilize the USB devices, the MT20s. And for our off-campus, we came up with an iPad with a dongle that both powers the device and the MT20. So that, of course, is a little more expensive than the old trans devices we used to use, but that's hard to convince a mom and pop shop to drop $600-700 into a new reader. But if we have to donate or subsidize some of those, we may have to do that.
Okay. And Cheryl?
Yeah, our library, we had already taken the barcode off of our ID card several years ago, so that was not an issue. We use Pharos on campus, but they do not actually use their ID card and tap it or swipe it anywhere. They tap their number into the system, so that was not a problem. Yes, our off-campus vendors, we are Transact School, and we use the BB1 product. So we put the little MRD5 at all of our different off-campus locations, as well as all of our quad point registers on campus.
Work fine. I found perhaps the off-campus vendors were your hardest to train because they have high turnover sometimes, and so trying to make sure it took probably a good 6 months before we really could feel like the off-campus program was settled down. So if you're looking at off-campus, that may be one of the ones you want to give special communication and instructions to. So. Okay, for the schools using mobile credentials currently, are transactions processing via NFC or QR codes? If you're using NFC, have you had any issues with device compatibility? I think most of us are probably using NFC versus QR codes, right? Okay. We're not, anyone having any NFC compatibility issues?
Not here.
No, we just had to make sure were upgraded, that's all.
Okay, all right. And then it's asking what mobile program everyone is using. Mark, which one are you? You're Seaboard.
My Apple Watch keeps connecting and disconnecting. What was the question again?
I'm sorry. What mobile program is everyone using?
It's the Apple Wallet. We're a Seaboard school, so that's what we're using.
Okay. Cheryl?
Transact.
And Bob?
We're Transact as well.
Yes, yeah, okay, and we are also, so. And then off-campus, another off-campus, are the vendors set up to accept the mobile credential, and are they included as a stakeholder when doing the groundbreaking work for mobile? They weren't for mine because I couldn't talk to them, so Cheryl? Yeah.
They weren't for ours either. We did supply the MRD5 reader for all of our off-campus merchants. We did not ask them to pay for it. When we approached them about the reader and that we are going mobile, they were all very excited and very embraced it very well.
Okay. And then are you still using a dual credential for door access, mobile and PIN? We're not.
We
No.
have that in a couple places, just highly secure areas where, they still want something you have, something but it's only for really sensitive areas. It's not commonplace on campus, but we still have that option for that type of reader if it's needed.
Okay.
Yeah, our data centers have the three-factor authentication, the card, the PIN, the chip, all that kind of good stuff, but very limited.
Okay. Jorn? We're going to let you we're keeping an eye on time here. We have quite a few questions left. Do you want to take a couple more, okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. How do you verify ID when you're using mobile credentials? I think it's, well, your phone, as I think Bob, it didn't show with your screen, Bob, but yes, when the mobile credential itself has a photo, name, actually has more information than our card did. It talks about what department or, what college you're registered with. So you can still, at least I know ours are any of our vendors can ask to see the photo on the mobile card. We just ask that they do not touch the mobile device. Anyone doing anything different there?
No, same.
Same.
Okay, all right. Are mobile credentials licensed by account or device? And they're looking at if you have 5,000 students and they each did 2 devices, how does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Mark, you want to start?
It's a user, so it's not, so if I can have both my watch and my phone and it's one license.
Okay. And Bob?
I'm not certain how that works. I'm sure that may vary by company. You may want to check with your sales rep for your respective provider and see how they choose to do that finance-wise.
Yeah, I agree. Cheryl?
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, we do, because in our case it is by user, but there are limits on the device. And then we have a question that we've been talking a lot about Apple Wallet, and that's probably because it was the first one released. What about Android Google? Cheryl?
We have been one of the test sites for the Google Pay product for the Transact. We've been told hopefully that will be coming out within the next month, but as Mark or Bob has been using the Android as well on campus, it just didn't have all of the features that it did in the Apple Wallet. So hopefully those will be coming soon for the Android and Google users.
We had a few of those users, and us too. We've been a test site and looked to launch the real product with the Apple parity this summer.
Okay. And here's a question. Have any students raised privacy concerns? And I think we might want to extend that to faculty and staff too. Bob, you want to start with that one?
No, we had one, one person that they didn't want to do this because we were going to be tracking them. And I said, well, I mean, what would we track? We don't track already. If you use an ID card to go in the door, that's recorded in your history the same as your the transaction with your phone. We don't have access to your phone to track your movement from one building to another, or from work to the grocery store to the beauty shop. So there's really nothing more we could track if we even cared about tracking you. So I think we convinced her there wasn't a lot of difference.
Cheryl, have you experienced that?
We have not had any issues with it so far.
Okay, Mark?
No, and like Bob was saying, I mean, we already know where you're eating, when you're eating, what doors you're going in and out of. I think the concern would be the fact of like location services being turned on with the phone so that you're watching me somehow walk from one side of the campus to the other. But you have Live Safe apps and all sorts of apps already on your phone that do that for you. So it hasn't been an issue, thankfully.
Yeah. I do think sometimes NFC and GPS are mixed up by people. They don't always understand the difference. And there's a question we haven't had before, and that is, what is the verification process when providing students with a mobile ID? Cheryl?
With us, before we were actually pushing for the online photo, when a student comes in to get their ID to have their picture, okay, let me back up. You have to have a photo within the Transact system in order to turn your mobile credential on. So they're going to have to come in either in person or online photo, submit a photo through the online photo system, and at the same time provide a copy of their driver's license, either in person or through the online photo. So we are verifying that person through that process.
Okay, great. Bob?
Well, so far it's been the same. We would still verify them for mobile as the same way we would for a plastic card. For their first ID, which we require some sort of valid government-issued photo ID, federal governments be military passports accepted, state government, no driver's license. We were still requiring that same thing for the mobile. Now, going into COVID-19 days, we'll probably be doing IDs remotely. We're still addressing how we're going to handle that verification remotely, if we are using some service for that, if we require them to upload scans of those documents, and then we're getting into, do we maintain that somewhere? Do we delete it, scrap it, or how? So the next couple of weeks, we'll be deciding how that's going to work going forward for the summer. But as far as the virtual orientation goes and the COVID-19, I think having the mobile ID has us set up in a good situation where we can still get IDs to students without them coming to campus. Even if we have classes in the fall, that's really going to significantly reduce the crowds, the lines, the people we have physically are in and around the office. So I'm looking forward to distributing as many mobile IDs this summer virtually away from the office as we can.
Yes. Mark?
Yeah, like Cheryl and Bob were saying that, traditionally we have to have the photo, we verify the ID in the office, but with this whole COVID remote thing, we do have, and I was checking some of our photos that are being uploaded right now for the orientation sessions, that we can require to have a driver's license scan uploaded along with your photo. So we'll have to figure out if that'll be good enough that I've got your photo, I've got a driver's license. Of course, I'm not going to know if that's a valid driver's license by a JPEG in our system, but whether or not that would be enough verification to say, okay, that's really Mark. He went the extra effort and got a fake ID that actually matches the picture he uploaded. We'll have to deal with that, I think, as we roll.
I actually feel that because we're doing ID validation online, that we're doing a better job of it, because we are truly stopping in a rush of, you know, we have orientation sessions in chunks of 400. When you have that rush to check an ID, are you really looking at anything aside a quick look at the photo and the names? So we feel now, because we are actually looking at several criteria, that we're doing a much better job of it. And the truth is, I'm not sure that I would recognize a fake ID when it's presented to us, and all the staff would, because if you've looked at some of these student fake IDs, they're really good quality. So, you know, I'm not sure that we're not doing a much better job with mobile, okay, along that line. So.
Yeah, one more thing too, Janine, is that, you know, the multi-factor authentication that we now, I totally blew this off, was the multi-factor authentication that we thought the university was using, but they weren't. But now basically all the students are being forced into it because of us. That is really nailing down the responsibility of who's who back to the university, that they're registered, they're enrolled, they're who they think they are in the system. So the multi-factor authentication should help us also, or help me sleep at night thinking that Mark really has Mark's card.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think your IT departments will like you, because the same thing happened with us. We have forced Duo before they come to orientation, even though they're doing it virtual this year, but it really made it easier for everyone in the fall then. That was one less thing that everyone had to deal with, particularly the IT support desk, when they did force it. So that's a really good point. So
we had actually implemented Duo about a year before we went live with mobile. So the students were already used to that. So that was a big help for us.
there you go. Now, Joran, we have gone past time, so we probably better turn this back over to you. I really want to thank Bob, Mark, and Cheryl. That was a wonderful discussion, and hopefully everyone that attended felt the same way. So, Joran?
Janine, thank you. All four of you, thank you. Mark, Cheryl, Bob, Janine, excellent discussion. I think everybody got a lot of information. You guys fielded so many questions and did it so well. Thank you.